Hello everyone. In today's class, we will be discussing about law of conservation of linear and angular momentum and their proofs and collisions. Myself S. Vidyarani, working as Assistant Professor of Physics at MVS Government Degree College, Autonomous, Mehboob Nagar. In today's content, let us see in detail what is law of conservation of linear momentum and how it can be proved. In the same way, let us see law of conservation of angular momentum and its proof. Third one is what is torque and what is the vector form of torque, in what way torque helps us in day-to-day life. Next we will see about the collisions. So what is the definition of collisions and what are the types of collisions, so and their different impact on in day-to-day life. So first let us see law of conservation of linear momentum and we'll see the proof of that. First of all, let us see what is the definition or statement of law of conservation of linear momentum. According to law of conservation of linear momentum, when no external force acts on an isolated system of particles, then the total linear momentum of the system remains constant. So this is in simple method. If we write in mathematical form, as we have said in definition that no external force is acting on isolated system, that means external force, that is F external, is equal to 0. This implies the total linear momentum of the system remains constant. We know that rate of linear momentum is defined with letter P. So change in linear momentum or rate of change of linear momentum is defined as dP by dt. So this dP by dt, whereas F external is rate of change of linear momentum, hence we are saying that dP by dt is equal to 0. F external can be expressed as the rate of change of linear momentum, that is dP by dt. So dP by dt is equal to 0 according to this formula, that is external force is equal to 0. That means from when dP by dt is equal to 0, that implies that P is equal to constant, or P is a constant such that its derivative is equal to 0. What is P? As we all know, P is nothing but linear momentum. That means when no external force is acting on any body or a system, then the linear momentum remains constant. So in this way we can show the mathematical expression for the physical definition. Next we will see the proof of law of conservation of linear momentum. So for this to prove, consider a system which is consisting of n particles whose masses are let's say m1, m2, m3 and so on till mn, with velocities v1, v2, v3, vn and so on. So the system is having few particles, let us say n particles having different masses, and each one is moving with a different velocity, let us say. So these are the masses and these are the velocities of those particles which are embedded in that system. Then the total linear momentum of the system, as we know, is the vector sum of the momenta of individual particles. That means if we want to calculate the total linear momentum of the system, we have to sum up all the individual linear momentum of all the particles that are there in the system. So that means we know that if we say total linear momentum is denoted by the letter P, then the linear momentum of the first particle, let us say it's P1, and the linear momentum of the second particle is P2, the linear momentum of the third particle is P3, the linear momentum of the nth particle is Pn. So that means we have to add all the individual linear momentums so that to get our total linear momentum P. Hence, from this definition, we can write P is equal to, so linear momentum is nothing, is the product of mass and its velocity. So the mass of the first particle is m1 and the velocity of the first particle is v1. So the product is m1 v1. So this becomes our linear momentum of the first particle. Same way we have to consider the linear momentums of all the particles in terms of mass and velocities. That means, so P2 is nothing but m2 v2, P3 is m3 v3, Pn is Mn Vn. So in this way we have to write all the combinations of all the linear momentums. P is equal to summation of all the linear momentums, that is I is equal to 1 to n mi vi. I is nothing but 1 to n, all the particles. So that is equal to, so total mass, let us say the summation of all the masses is, let us say m. Then the summation of all the velocities, let us say it is equal to center of mass of the system. So I have written here all the sum of the velocities as V of Cm, that is center of mass of the system. dP by dt is equal to d by dt of m into V into center of mass. So here we are differentiating with respect to time. So dP by dt gives d by dt of this value, that is m into velocity of center of mass. So then if you see here, as mass is constant value, we cannot differentiate, hence mass is taken outside the differentiation. Hence dP by dt is equal to m into, so the remaining velocity can be differentiated with respect to time, hence dVcm by dt. So next dP by dt is equal to, we know that rate of change of velocity is nothing but acceleration. Hence dP by dt is equal to m into a into center of mass, m into a of center of mass, that is acceleration of center of mass. So dP by dt is equal to MACM, which is nothing but this is equal to F external force, that is external force. Because we know that according to the force definition, force is equal to mass times acceleration. Hence whatever here we got mass times of acceleration of center of mass, that is equal to external force. But according to the definition of law of conservation of linear momentum, this external force is not there. That means external force has become zero, because in an isolated system there won't be any external force acting on the system. Hence F external is equal to 0. So from this definition, so we have to substitute the value of F external as 0 in the above equation. Then this equation changes. Therefore dP by dt is equal to, in place of external we are substituting 0. Hence dP by dt is equal to 0. If you observe this, that means rate of change of linear momentum is equal to 0. That implies our linear momentum is a constant value. Hence P is equal to constant. This is how we prove the law of conservation of linear momentum. That means when no external force is acting on an isolated system, the total linear momentum remains constant. Now we will move on to law of conservation of angular momentum. So to prove this, first let us see the statement. When no external torque acting on a system of particles, then the total angular momentum of the system remains constant. That means same as in the case of linear momentum, we have seen that if there is no external force acting on a system, then P remains constant. In the same way, whereas their external force is equal to here external torque in case of angular momentum. Hence, if tau external becomes 0, that means if there is no torque acting on a system, then the total angular momentum called L remains constant. That means if tau external is equal to 0, tau external can be expressed in terms of rate of change of angular momentum. Hence tau external can be written as dl by dt is equal to 0. That means, or that implies, angular momentum L remains constant. So same as in the case of linear momentum, there F external remains constant, then P is equal to constant. F external is equal to 0, then P is equal to constant. Here in the angular momentum case, tau external is equal to 0, that means angular momentum L remains constant. So the angular momentum of a particle of linear momentum P and having position vector R is given by, so this is the vector form of angular momentum that we are showing here. So vector form of L is equal to R cross P, whereas we know that R is the position vector and P is the linear momentum. So the cross product of position vector and linear momentum gives a vector called angular momentum, which is represented by the letter L. So if for a system, for suppose there is a system of n particles, then this angular momentum, total angular momentum will be equal to angular momentums of all the individual particles. So hence, so the first particle angular momentum, let us say, is L1. Second particle angular momentum is L2. In the same nth particle angular momentum is Ln, suppose. Then if we add all the individual angular momentas, then we will get the total angular momentum for the system of n particles. So this L, angular momentum L, can be expressed as summation of I is equal to 1 to n Li. Li is nothing but I means particle value. So for the first particle this will be L1, and second particle this will be L2. So we are summing up all the individual angular momentums. So hence we can write it as summation of I is equal to 1 to n Li. So this is also can be written as, from the definition or vector form of L, this Li can be written as cross product of Ri and Pi. Hence I have taken in the form vector form. This Li is replaced by Ri cross Pi, and the summation remains same. So total angular momentum L is equal to summation of I is equal to 1 to n Ri cross Pi. If you observe the figure here, so this is the, we are showing the angular momentum in the space. So if you observe here, so this is the position vector R. So this is the perpendicular R. If you observe, the green line is the momentum. So that is represented by P, and this is the I value, that is moment of inertia. So if you see here, this is the theta that is there. So R and P are in the XY plane. So this is how we can show the relation of angular momentum L as a vector product of R and P. That is, here we have R, here we are having P. So here the L is in perpendicular to XY plane. So let us see the differentiation of angular momentum. When we differentiate the angular momentum, so we get dl by dt is equal to summation I is equal to 1 to n. So d by dt of Ri cross Pi. So next, if you see here, so we have to differentiate the each vector separately. Hence dl by dt is equal to summation I is equal to 1 to n dri by dt cross Pi plus Ri cross dpi by dt. So we are differentiating each term respectively. So next, if you see here, this dl by dt is equal to summation I is equal to 1 to n. So dri, position vector differentiation, gives the this is the displacement. Ri is nothing but displacement or the position vector. This gives the velocity. Rate of change of displacement is nothing but velocity. Hence, in place of dri dt, we can substitute velocity vi. So here I have taken vi cross pi plus this is position vector ri cross, whereas rate of change of linear momentum is nothing but force. So that is equal to Fi. So I have taken here Fi. Okay. So next, if we further simplify, so rate of change of angular momentum dl by dt is equal to summation I have taken separately for both the terms. So summation I is equal to 1 to n. So if I multiply, if you observe here, this P, that is linear momentum, is a product of mass and velocity. So I have changed P in terms of m and v. So vi is cross mi into vi plus summation I is equal to 1 to n ri cross fi. So next, if you see here, dl by dt is equal to summation I is equal to 1 to n. Mi is the mass, so which can be taken out of the cross product. So mi into vi cross vi plus summation I is equal to 1 to n from the definition of torque. As we all know, force is for linear momentum, whereas tau is related with angular momentum. So tau is nothing but the vector product of position vector and force. So hence here in place of Ri cross Fi, I can write directly tau I, that is torque. So summation I is equal to 1 to n tau I. Next, if we further simplify, dl by dt, as we all know, the cross product of the same vector or same position vector will be 0. Hence Vi cross Vi becomes 0. Hence this first term becomes 0 plus, so the second term is nothing but summation of all the torques of individual particles will give the external torque acting on that system. Hence 0 plus this becomes tau external because Vi cross Vi becomes 0. Now if we further move, therefore dl by dt, that means rate of change of angular momentum, is equal to external torque, that is tau external. But from the definition of law of conservation of angular momentum, we know that there is no external torque acting on an isolated system, hence tau external becomes 0. So when we substitute the value of tau external is equal to 0 in the above equation, so here we will get as rate of change of angular momentum is equal to 0. That means when rate of change of angular momentum becomes 0, that means or that implies our angular momentum remains constant. So this is how we will be proving law of conservation of angular momentum. Now let us move on and see about torque. So what is torque? So if you observe here, I have taken one pivot here and I am applying the force here, and the distance between the pivot and force is the perpendicular distance, let us say. So I am applying force at this distance. So what happens? So because of a torque helps us in rotation, or else a torque produces rotation. You might have observed when we open a door or close a door, we apply torque. So when we are closing the door or opening a door, we are applying torque so that it is causing rotation from its hinge. In the same way, when you open a tap or close a tap, that causes rotation because of torque. So torque helps us in rotating any body. If you observe here, there is a spanner here. When we are screwing a nut or when we are unscrewing a nut, then we apply torques which causes rotation to unscrew or screw the nut. So now if you see torque in vector form, so this can be explained by a figure here. If you observe, so we know that torque is equal to cross product of position vector and force, whereas angular momentum L is equal to cross product of position vector and momentum. So here I have shown in the figure, so how this L and tau are working here. If you observe, so our position vector is the perpendicular distance, that is denoted by the red line. So here R is this distance. So from the hinge to the where we are applying the force. So and F is the force where we are applying. So here we are applying the force so that it is causing a torque in the perpendicular direction of R and F, so that this is able to move to and fro. And if you observe angular momentum L is equal to R cross P, same is in the case C. So here if you observe L, so L is applying down, when it is moving this side, L is applying upwards. When P is applied towards the anti-clockwise direction, then L is towards downwards. So this is how we can show the relation between torque and force. When we apply some force to the perpendicular distance, then there exists a torque which causes the rotation. Now let us see a few examples relating to torque. Consider force which is required to open a door. Is it easier to open the door by pushing or pulling away from hinge or close to hinge? Think a while and answer my question. So is it easier to open the door by pushing or pulling away from hinge or close to hinge? So just recollect once, while opening a door or closing a door, where you will be applying your force, whether to the near of the hinge or to a very far distance away from the hinge. So close to hinge, you try once, by applying force close to hinge, and you try once by applying force away from hinge. So you might have observed that the farther from the hinge, larger will be the rotational effect. So at what distance you are applying the force, so it is directly proportional to the rotational effect. So if distance is more, distance of the force applied is more, then rotational effect also will be more. So this is the concept of torque. So because the force when you are applying so to a perpendicular distance, then it is causing rotational effect because of the torque. So that means torque can be defined as rate of change of angular momentum is defined as torque, that is T is equal to tau is equal to dl by dt. It can also be defined as the moment of force, or else tau is also defined as moment of force. So few points to remember while discussing about the torque is, so the torque is maximum when theta is equal to 90 degrees, as we all know. So here we have shown that the rate of change of angular momentum, that is dl by dt, or else L is equal to R cross F. So R cross F is nothing but L is equal to RF sin theta. So RF sin theta means whatever force we are applying to the perpendicular distance, that will be maximum when theta is equal to 90 degrees. At that point the torque will be maximum. So we know that tau is equal to RF sin theta. Sin theta in place of theta, if you put 90 degrees, sin theta is equal to 1. So tau is equal to RF, that means the torque will be maximum when theta is equal to 90 degrees. Due to this fact, in opening or closing a heavy revolving door, the force is applied at right angles to the door at its outer edge. So when we open a close a robust or heavy revolving door, so the force we apply, if we apply force at right angles to the door at its outer edge, then so the torque caused will be maximum, because of which we can be able to revolve the revolving door in a very easy manner. So the torque also depends on the position of the point relative to origin at which the force is applied. So this is also I have told that where you are applying the force is also very much important, so that it will cause movement or the rotation because of the torque. So the torque also depends on the position of the point relative to origin. That means suppose if you are moving a door, so the origin will be at the hinge. So the torque will be more when you apply the force at a very as possible as a very large distance from the hinge. So the torque also depends on the position of the point at which the force is applied relative to the origin. And also if you observe, when the force is applied on the origin, let us say if you push a door or pull a door at the hinge, putting force at the hinge, what happens? So because same is the case, tau is equal to RF sin theta. So we are applying the force on the origin, that means theta becomes 0. That means, R becomes 0. That means it produces 0 torque about origin. So when we apply force at the hinges or on the origin, so it produces 0 torque, because the perpendicular distance R or the position vector R becomes 0, so there won't be any torque produced. So because of which we cannot open or close the door by applying force at the hinges. So let us see the visual of applying torque. So this man is pulling the door. If you observe here there is the hinge here. So as much distance as possible he has taken the position vector, that is displacement, distance, perpendicular distance, and now he is applying force here, so that without any effort he is able to move the door, or he is able to open the door. So this is more important, that where you are applying the force, whether you are applying force close to the hinge or away from the hinge, because of which the torque the torque developed will be more or less according to the force applied. Now we will move on to our next topic called collision. So what is collision? And let us see with few examples what is a collision, and let us understand a bit about collisions. In normal words, if you see, collision means striking of two bodies. So collision is nothing but when two bodies are in contact to one another for a let's say for a very little span, then we call them it as collision. In the language of physics, collision means a redistribution of the total momentum of the bodies or particles when they approach each other. When they approach each other, that means, so after the collision what happens, there will be a redistribution of the momentum of the bodies from one body to the other body, so when they are approaching or when they are colliding. So when the redistribution of momentum happens, that means in the language of physics we say that a collision has happened. So for this, if you observe, the bodies may not even touch each other, but even we can say that they have undergone collision. So because even though the bodies do not touch physically with each other, so sometimes we may say that collision has occurred because it is due to the interaction forces between those bodies. So even because of the interaction forces acting between those two bodies, so collision may occur. So this is how the meaning of collision or the definition of collision can be said. So we will see few examples. Collision example. Here if you see, so one green marble or green ball is colliding with a blue ball which is at rest. So initially green ball is moving and it is hitting or it is colliding with the blue ball which is at rest. After collision, what happens? Blue ball has gained velocity and is moving, but whereas the green ball which was earlier moving has come to rest. So collision may happen in this way also. So two balls colliding each other. Now an example for collision is also car accidents or any accident that we see on roads is an example of collision. So when two bodies collide or when two bodies come together in contact, so we say that there is a change in the momentums of both the bodies. Then we can say that there happened a collision. Let us see some if a collision problem animation by doing animation. Now if you see the example here, let us say our first cart is having a mass m1 which is of 4 kg. The second cart is also having a mass of 4 kg. Let us say both are having equal masses. Let us say the second cart or the second body is at rest. So here you two have considered it as 0. Whereas the first cart is moving with a velocity of 2 meters per second. That means it is going to hit this second cart which is at rest. So now we will see what happens. So as the first cart which is moving has approached the second body which is at rest. So what happens? The first body has come to rest. So that's why after collision, the velocity of the first body becomes 0 and the velocity of the second body, if you observed, so it was exchanged with the first body. That means first body's velocity before collision is given to the second body after collision, whereas the second body which is at rest before collision, it has been exchanged with the first body after collision. So first body has come to rest, whereas the second body is moving with the velocity of the first body before collision. So that means velocities have been interchanged when two bodies of equal masses in which one of the bodies at rest, then the bodies exchange their velocities after the collision. Now if we will see Suppose both are moving. Here both are moving in the same direction. That means, so first one is approaching the second one, which is moving in the same direction. So the first one is having a mass of 4 kg. The second one is also having a mass of 4 kg. Now the first cart is moving with a velocity of 2 meters per second. The second one is moving with a velocity of half meter per second. So when they collide, what happens? Let us see. So when they collided, what happened? If you observe, again their velocities have been exchanged because of equal masses. If you observe, the first cart has interchanged its velocity with the second cart after collision. So that means the velocity of the second body before collision has been given to the first cart after collision. So now the velocity of the first cart has become 0.5 meters per second, and the velocity of the second body has been equal to the first mass velocity before collision, that is 2 meters per second, and both are moving in the same direction. Let us see, let us increase the velocity, increase the mass of the first cart, then let us see what happens. If you observe this, now the velocities has changed because of the different masses. Let us say this 6 kg cart is moving with a velocity of 2 meters per second. The second cart is also moving in the same direction of the first one with a velocity of half meter per second. So if you observe, after the collision, so the first cart velocity has been reduced to 0.8 meters per second, whereas the second cart has gained a velocity of 2.3 meters per second, and both are moving in the same direction. So now let us see both of them in the opposite direction. Now let us make these equal, 6 kg, and let us say both are moving in the opposite direction. So now let us see. So opposite direction means minus I have shown to show the direction. So now we will see what happens. So both are having equal masses but moving in the, that means both are approaching in the opposite direction. So the first cart is moving with a velocity of 2 meters per second. The second cart is moving with a velocity of half meter per second. Now let us see what happens. So if you observe, you might have observed, after the collision, both of the carts retarded back. That means both retraced their path. That means if you observe here, so again I will show you. So both retraced their path. That means, so they both move in the opposite direction even after the collision. So both move away from each other after collision. See here, now this the first cart has exchanged its velocity with the second cart after the collision. Hence the first cart got the velocity of 0.5 meters per second. The second cart got the velocity of 2 meters per second, which is the velocity of the first cart before collision. So if we decrease one of the masses, let us see what happens. So if you observe here, this body is having heavy mass when compared to the second cart. So when they collide, what happened? The first cart has come to rest. That too, after colliding, it came back and stopped. That means it retraced its path. So now it has become, its velocity becomes 0. That means it has come to rest. Whereas the second cart, which is of lighter one in both of the bodies, then it will gain velocity of 2.5 meters per second, and it moves in the opposite direction to the first cart. So again let us see once. So this is how we can show different masses and different velocities after collision, how their velocities changes. So this is the example that I can show you for different velocities, how the velocities changes for different masses where in different directions when they are approaching each other, when they are moving away from each other, or when they are moving in the same direction. So all these we have tried and I have shown. Now let us see. So in collisions there are three types of collisions. First one is called as perfectly elastic collision. So what is perfectly elastic collision? So in perfectly elastic collision, when the kinetic energy of the particles remains conserved in the collision is said to be elastic. So in perfectly elastic collision, what happens is that, so even though after the collision takes place, the kinetic energy of the particles remains same even after the collision, then those collisions are said to be elastic. So the collisions, for example, between atomic particles or nuclear particles or fundamental particles such as electron, proton and neutron are usually elastic. So that means their kinetic energy is conserved even after the collision. So one more point to remember is that in elastic collision, the conservation of momentum and conservation of kinetic energy holds good. So both the conservation of momentum, linear momentum, as well as the conservation of kinetic energy, both are applicable in elastic collisions. So that means in mathematical form if you write, so m1 u1 is nothing but linear momentum of the first particle. Let us say linear momentum of the second body is m2 u2. When we add, we get the total linear momentum before collision, that is m1 u1 plus m2 u2, which is equal to, let us say after the collision the first particle is moving with a velocity v1 and the second particle is moving with a velocity v2, then their respective linear momentums will be m1 v1 plus m2 v2. So when we add these linear momentums, it is a linear momentum after collision. That means linear momentum before collision should be equal to linear momentum after collision. So in perfectly elastic collision, so conservation of linear momentum holds good. As well as I have told just now that even conservation of kinetic energy holds good in case of perfectly elastic collisions. We know that kinetic energy is nothing but half mv square, where m is the mass of the body, v is the velocity of the body. Here if you consider the velocities of each particle before collision and after collision, so m1, m2 are the masses of the two bodies, u1, u2 are the velocities of the particles respectively before collision, and v1 and v2 are the velocities of the two particles after collision. So applying kinetic energy formula, we get before collision the kinetic energies of both the particles will be half m1 u1 square plus half m2 u2 square. In the same way, kinetic energy after the collision will be half m1 v1 square plus half m2 v2 square. So kinetic energy before collision is equal to kinetic energy after collision, which means that law of conservation of kinetic energy holds good in case of perfectly elastic collision. Here m1, m2 are the masses of the colliding particles, u1, u2, v1, v2 are the velocities before and after collision of the particles respectively. For example, to show the example for elastic collision, see carom board, when we play the carom board, we strike the coins with the striker. So because of which, so conservation of kinetic energy as well as conservation of linear momentum can be shown. So here there is a collision happening when the striker collides with the coins. So let us see an animation regarding elastic collision. So if you observe here, this is the billiards pool. So when you strike the any of the color balls with a cue ball, what happens? Let us see. So when this person is hitting with the cue ball, So no kinetic energy is getting lost, or no damage to the balls, or no energy is lost in the form of heat. So this can be example for elastic collision. When there is no kinetic energy loss or no damage to the bodies or no heat is evolved or no heat energy is evolved, then we say that this is a perfect example for elastic collisions. Now let us move on to inelastic collision. So in perfectly elastic collision, we came to know that kinetic energy is conserved as well as linear momentum is conserved. But in case of inelastic collision, kinetic energy doesn't remain constant. That means kinetic energy is changed before and after the collision. But conservation of linear momentum holds good in case of inelastic collision. Then such collisions are said to be inelastic. So that means in inelastic collisions, law of conservation of kinetic energy doesn't hold good, but whereas law of conservation of linear momentum holds good. So for example of inelastic collisions are collisions between gross bodies are always inelastic. That means when a bullet is fired from a gun, it remains embedded in a target, which is an example for inelastic collision. In inelastic collision between large particles, the loss of kinetic energy occurs in the form of heat energy. So whatever the change in kinetic energy or the loss of kinetic energy happens after inelastic collision, that will be in the form of heat energy. So I have shown a visual here. So a bullet is embedded into the wood, let us say. So because the bullet is moving with high speed, when it is embedded into the wood, what happens? A large amount of heat is released. So that means kinetic energy has changed before and after the collision with the wood. So hence, so this can be an example of inelastic collision. Let us say one more example. So here if you see wagon 1, wagon 2 are coming near to one another. So when a collision is happening, both are coming to rest. That means both have become as one entity. That means kinetic energy has changed. So this is also an example for inelastic collision. Now let us see one animation regarding elastic as well as inelastic collision animation. So if you observe here, two cards whose, let us say the first cart is moving with a velocity of 3 meters per second, and the second cart is moving with a velocity of 5 meters per second in the opposite, that means both are traveling in the opposite direction to one another. That means both are approaching to one another, let us say, and both the masses, let us say the first cart is having a mass of 2 kg, whereas the second cart is having a mass of 1 kg. Now let us see elastic collision between these two. See, so when both are approaching, after the hitting, after the collision takes place, both move away from one another, and the velocities are 2.3 meters per second, and this has gained a velocity of 5.7 meters per second. So both, if you observe here, their velocities have changed in the form of 2.3 meters per second as well as 5.7 meters per second. Let us say both are having equal masses. So both are having masses 2 kg, let us say. One is moving at a velocity of 3 meters per second and the second cart is moving with a velocity of 5 meters per second. Now let us see the elastic collision between these two carts. So both are approaching. So if you observe again, let us see. First one is 3 meters, second one is 5 meters. So after the collision, The first one is moving with the velocity of the second one before collision, and the second car is moving with the velocity of the first one before collision. That means their velocities has been exchanged. See, if you see here, the first one has a velocity of 3 meters per second before collision, and the second body is having a velocity of 5 meters per second before collision. After the collision, the first one gained the velocity of the second body. The second body has gained the velocity of the first body. So when two bodies of equal masses are approaching to one another, their velocities gets exchanged before and after the collision. So next we will see the inelastic collision. Let us say both are having equal masses and both are approaching. So the first one is moving with 3 meters per second speed and the second one's velocity is 5 meters per second speed. Let us see the inelastic collision. So this is an example for the inelastic collision. As I have already told, in inelastic collision, both the bodies move as one entity. So hence, their velocities have been compromised to 1 meters per second and both are having the same velocity moving in the same direction. So now these two cars have combined as one body. So this is an example for inelastic collision. So one more example let us see. So let us see inelastic collision. One is having a 3 kg mass, the second one is having 2 kg mass, and the first is, let us say, is traveling with a velocity of 9 meters per second. The second one is moving with a velocity of 5 meters per second. So both are approaching to one another. Let us see the inelastic collision for what happens. So if you observe here, again in this case inelastic collision, after the collision both bodies move as one entity and their velocity is also same. That means both are moving as one entity, means both are moving with the same velocity, that is 3.4 meters per second. So this is how we can show the elastic collision as well as inelastic collision. In elastic collision, both the entities or both the bodies, even after the collision, move as different entities. But whereas in inelastic collision, after the collision, both the bodies move as one entity. Now let us see the explosion case. Let us see one mass of 3 kg, mass of 2 kg, let us see. So let us see the explosion. So when both the cards are coming together, let us see how the explosion takes place. So after explosion, so both are moving with the velocities of 3.3 meters per second away from each other, and this is moving with a velocity of 5 meters per second. This is how we can show the elastic collision as well as inelastic collision. Now let us move on to semi-elastic collision. What is semi-elastic collision? The collisions that fall between perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic collisions are known as semi-elastic collisions. That means they are partly elastic and they are partly inelastic. Such collisions are called as semi-elastic collision. In these collisions, a part of the total kinetic energy is lost during collision. As we all know, the definition for inelastic collision is that total kinetic energy changes, that means which is not conserved. So hence in this semi-elastic collision also, a part of the total kinetic energy is lost during collision. So but this loss of kinetic in such collisions is not sufficient to the extent that the bodies move on as one entity, as in case of perfectly inelastic collision. Though the kinetic energy is changing as in the case of inelastic collisions, but this loss of kinetic energy is not sufficient to move the bodies as one entity as in the case of inelastic collision, but still the conservation of momentum holds good. So when we draw a flow chart regarding collision of collision type flow chart stuck together, that means yes. If both the bodies are stuck together, that means yes, then they are completely inelastic. If they are not stuck together, our answer is no. Then next question is crushed or bent. That means any deformity? No. So no deformity, no stuck together. Then both are not stuck together. Then that means it's elastic body. The bodies are elastic, or the collision happened is elastic collision. If our answer is yes, if they are stuck together, that means yes. Then we say that they are moving with as one entity. That means they are completely inelastic in nature. The collision whatever happened is a inelastic collision. Or else if they are not stuck together but crushed or bent, that means both are moving in the different directions, not as one entity but crushed or bent, then we say that partially inelastic, or partially we say that they are semi elastic in nature. So when stuck together, what happens? That means both are moving in elastic, collision happens, means what is that? So Ke, kinetic energy, is lost. Whereas when there is no stuck to there, no bending, no crushing, that means elastic collision. When there is elastic collision, no kinetic energy is lost. No kinetic energy is lost means kinetic energy is conserved. But even though if they are not stuck together but crushed a little bit or bent a little bit, then we say that it is semi-elastic in nature. That means some of the kinetic energy is lost. This is how we can show the different types of collisions, that is perfectly elastic, perfectly inelastic and semi-elastic. Now let us consider the special case, that is semi-elastic case. When considering these cases, let us suppose there are two bodies which are having masses m1 and m2 moving with velocities u1 and u2. So and they are colliding with each other. Let their velocities after collisions be v1 and v2 respectively. So for semi-elastic collision, we have one formula, that is E is equal to relative velocity of separation after collision by relative velocity of approach before collision. So relative velocity of separation after collision is that v2 minus v1. These are the velocities after collision. So relative velocity means difference. So v2 minus v1 by relative velocity of approach before collision. That means, so before collision they are moving with the velocities of u1 and u2 say. So relative velocity is their difference. Hence u2 minus u1. So now if we want to find out the relative velocity of separation after collision, that will be equal to, that is v2 minus v1 is equal to E into u2 minus u1. So where this E is called as coefficient of inelastic collision or coefficient of restitution. So E is called as coefficient of inelastic collision or restitution. So this E can be defined as the ratio of the absolute values of the relative velocities of the bodies after and before collision. So E can be taken as the ratio of relative velocities after collision and before collision. So when E is equal to 1, let us say in this case when E is equal to 1, that means V2 minus V1 is equal to U2 minus U1, or else if you observe U1 plus U1 minus V1 is equal to U2 minus V2. So this is how this happens only in the case of perfectly elastic collision. So when E is equal to 1, substituting E is equal to 1, V2 minus V1 is equal to U2 minus U1. See, now let us see few definitions regarding collisions. So if you observe here, two billiards balls are colliding with each other, let us say. So here when they are moving, when they are colliding, what happens? There will be a plane of contact here. So I have drawn a plane of contact here. So this is how during collisions we came around to know about few terms called impact. So what is impact? Let us see. Impact is nothing but collision between two bodies that occurs during a small time interval and involves large forces. Though the collision takes place between two bodies for a small interval of time, but large forces are applied. So that is called as impact. So now we will move on to the term line of impact. What is line of impact? So line of impact can be defined as common normal to the surfaces in contact during impact. So this is the plane of impact. So this is the common normal drawn to the surfaces of of the bodies which are in contact during impact. Now let us see what is central impact. Central impact is nothing but the mass centers of the two bodies lie on the line of impact. Let us say the first body mass center is this, the second body mass center is this. If both the mass centers lie on the same line of impact, then we call it as central impact. If the mass centers doesn't lie on the same line of impact, it can be said as eccentric impact. Now we will see direct central impact. Direct central impact is nothing but the velocities of the two bodies which are directed along the line of impact. Then we call them as direct central impact. Now we will see oblique central impact. Impact for which one or the both of the bodies move along the line other than the line of impact. So when two bodies collide, after the impact, if the one of the bodies is moving away from the line of impact, then we call such impact as oblique central impact. Let us see the definitions of line of impact. When two bodies collide, their surfaces are in contact during collision. If a line is drawn perpendicular to the common tangent to the surfaces at the point of contact, the line is called line of impact, that I have shown here. So when a perpendicular is drawn to the plane of contact, so joining the two surfaces of the bodies, then we get the line of impact. Direct impact. When the centers of the mass of the colliding bodies are initially moving along the line of impact, then it is called as direct impact, or we can say it as head-on collision. So when both the same masses center are initially moving along the line of impact, then we call it as a head-on collision or direct impact. After direct impact also, the bodies continue to move along the line of impact. So when two bodies are in direct impact, after the collision also the bodies continue to move along the line of impact. Now let us see what is oblique impact. When the centers of mass of the colliding bodies are not initially moving along the line of impact, then the impact is called as oblique. So in contrary to the direct impact, so when the centers of mass of the colliding bodies, any of the bodies, is not initially moving along the line of impact, then we call such impacts as oblique impact. So here is the figure for oblique impact. So when oblique impact occurs, see here the plane of contact is this. So both balls are coming in this direction. The first ball has been moving in this direction, the second ball are moving in this direction. So the line of impact is there. They are not moving along the line of impact before the collision. Even after the collision also, they move in different directions. So when oblique impact occurs between two small particles, the particles move away from each other with velocities having unknown directions as well as unknown magnitudes. Provided the initial velocities are known, from unknowns may be represented either as VA2, VB2. Theta 2 is the angle made from the line of impact of the second one. Phi 2 will be the angle made by the second ball after collision with the line of impact. So this is how, if you observe, both are approaching from different directions, and after colliding they both move in different directions with different angles from the line of impact. So this is how we have learned today about law of conservation of linear momentum and its proof, as well as law of conservation of angular momentum and its proof. And we have come to know what is torque, definition of torque, vector form of torque, examples of torque, and uses of torque, as well as we have also seen about collisions in real life, and types of collisions such as elastic collisions, inelastic collisions, and semi-elastic collision. And we have also seen what is coefficient of restitution, And we have also seen different terms that we come across during collisions, such as impact. In impact there are three types. One is direct impact, line of impact, and oblique impact. We have seen some animations regarding collisions as well as torque, and we have solved using different masses and different velocities in different directions, so that we will come to know about what is elastic collision, inelastic collision, and also what is semi-elastic collision. So thank you one and all for your patience listening. Signing off for today's session. Thank you.